there have been lots of injuries across the league on the defensive side of the ball. And after week 4, I feel like we've gathered enough information to move forward for the rest of the season with a fresh perspective based on the evidence that we've seen. So it's time to identify the top 12 fantasy football defenses for the rest of the season. That's the list that we are getting into today. And we are giving away 5 FFN White Hats this week because I just hit 5,000 subscribers and I have you to thank for that. So go down there in the comments right now, drop your hottest take for week 5 fantasy football for a chance to win this hat right here. And I need your help getting to 6,000 subscribers. So please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So let's go ahead and just dive into these defenses right now. So the first defense and the second defense in the second tier, they're both defenses that I just believe are great, but their matchups in the future are not that good. The first defense I have is the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense to me is just, when you look at the numbers on the screen, they speak for themselves. It's just, you don't see defenses averaging 20 fantasy points per game much. This defense is just aggressive. They're fast. They're athletic. They take the ball over. They're just a tremendous defense. And the problem that I have is that obviously Trayvon Diggs is gone. So Trayvon Diggs definitely takes a piece out of that secondary as far as the playmaking ability goes, which if you're looking for interceptions give you fantasy points. That's the reality here that they won't have for the rest of the season. And they also have the second worst strength of schedule heading into the rest of the season. They've got the 49ers this week, obviously. They've got the Chargers. They got Philadelphia twice still. They've got Miami. They've got Detroit, among others. So there's definitely a lot of tough matchups here. But the reality with Dallas's defense is they are literally just shutting teams down. Like, when they have won games this year, their opponents have like a combined total of like 15 points. It's ridiculous. They're so good defensively, and I just can't picture myself having them outside of number 1 because they're averaging 20 fantasy points per game. And the second defense here, they're a defense that in real life is really good. In fantasy football, they haven't been that great yet, and it's the 49ers defense. The 49ers defense is actually in the bottom half of fantasy football defenses through the first 4 weeks. They're averaging 7 fantasy points per game, and they're not really generating that many turnovers. They're averaging over a pick a game, but forced fumbles 0, fumble recovery 0, no defensive touchdowns, and only 2.5 sacks per game, basically. So there are definitely concerns that I have with the 49ers defense, but to me, their front 7 is just stacked. Obviously, they've got Nick Bosa, they've got Javon Hargrave. They've just got so many dudes up front. Fred Warner at the linebacker position. Like, the weakness is their secondary. That's the ultimate problem here. And again, they also have a bottom half strength of schedule. They've got to take on Philadelphia still. They need to take on Seattle twice still, Baltimore, the Los Angeles Rams again. There's issues here with the 49ers defense that I do acknowledge, while at the same time saying that this defense still has elite playmakers, and especially as the season goes on, they're going to get better, and then other teams are just going to be worn down by that time as well. So I like the 49ers defense at number 2. And dropping down to our next tier here, I've got the Saints defense at number 3. I love the Saints right now. There's so many reasons why. First of all, let's look at their numbers right now. So the Saints defense, it's nothing special right now. They're averaging 7.5 fantasy points per game, but they are getting after your quarterback and they are taking the ball away. They're averaging over a pick a game. They're averaging a forced fumble about every 4 games. And then they're also getting after your quarterback. And they're just a very physical team that really doesn't allow you to get many yards. So this is a defense that I do believe is going to get better because their strength of schedule is the 3rd best rest of season. That's the reality of what they're dealing with right now. Demario Davis, Pete Werner at the linebacker positions, they're having great seasons right now. Marshawn Lattimore's having a really good year again. This defense, I think, just has the athleticism, the aggression, the physicality to continue to do well, and especially against the rest of season schedule, I think we'll start seeing better fantasy football weeks from the Saints defense. Number 4, I've got the Buccaneers defense, man. Listen, the Bucs as a team has come as a massive shock to me this year. I was not expecting the Buccaneers to be this good, not only offensively, but defensively. I figured with Brady gone, their whole team was just going to take a step back. It really hasn't happened. Their secondary's killing it. Look at what they're doing per game. They're averaging almost 2 interceptions per game, and they're averaging 1 forced fumble and 1 fumble recovery per game. They're averaging 11 fantasy points per game, and they've played some real opponents. Their front 7 is great, 3 sacks per game. Like, this defense is really, really good, and they're killing it right now. They killed the Seahawks. They held their own for a little while against the Eagles. This team is much better than I thought. And Antoine Winfield, I mean, that secondary, Christian Izien, undrafted rookie for them, killing it. Killing it, killing it, killing it. And they also have a top half rest of season ranking in the entire league. The Bucs defense, guys, I think they're a very, very good defense to get in fantasy football for the rest of the season. Number 5, I've got the Colts defense right here. And again, the Colts defense I discussed last week in my top 12 defense rankings for week 4 fantasy football, which, by the way, week 5 fantasy football defense rankings will be out on Thursday, so expect that here tomorrow if you're watching on Wednesday. But I discussed them, and it obviously did not work out. They did end up getting beaten by the Rams, and they definitely let up a lot of points. But if you look at their numbers, they're still doing very well. 8 fantasy points per game, almost 4 sacks per game. They're getting the ball from you, 2 forced fumbles per game. Like, this defense is still very, very physical, and that's why I'm doubling down on them, because last week was last week, but they have the best strength of schedule for the rest of the season in the entire league. Listen, DeForest Buckner, Samson Ebukam, they're both having great seasons right now. Put them up against lower tier competition. I like them a lot for the rest of the season. Very similar to the Buccaneers. Number 6, I'm proud of this one. The Detroit Lions here at number 6. Now, before the start of the season, I came out with a top 12 fantasy football defense rankings video in July. And in that video, I had the Lions inside that list. And I caught some flack for it. A lot of people were saying, this is ridiculous. Where is this team? Where is that team over the Lions? Yeah, I was right on this one. That's the reality, because I said at the time, I'm hitching my wagon to a defense that is just really, really good, and they've got a stud young player, and it's paying off. Aiden Hutchinson is leading this front 7 to almost 4 sacks per game. He's helping out the secondary as well. They've almost got 1 pick per game, and they're averaging 8.8 fantasy football points per game. And listen, they have played real opponents during that time. Seahawks, Chiefs. They beat the Chiefs. They have played real offenses. I love the Lions defense right now. They're in the top 10 in the league of strength of schedule for the rest of the season. Like I said, Hutchinson's turning into a beast. The secondary's clamping down. Detroit Lions got some studs all over the field, and defensively for fantasy football, I'm big on having the Lions defense right now. The Browns defense at number 7 here. Now, listen, the Browns defense has been great so far. Myles Garrett is having another great season right now. He's almost got 6 sacks through 4 games, and the secondary is clamping down. The Browns defense is also averaging 8 fantasy points per game and 3 sacks per game. So the Browns defense, to me, is just going to continue to be a defense that really gives every single opponent struggles, and they don't have a great rest of season schedule, but they do have great players. Their secondary looks much better. Myles Garrett's getting after it this year. I'm big on the Browns defense as well. The Buffalo Bills defense, man, talk about a total direction change after week 1. They looked so bad in week 1, I thought their defense was going to get killed this year. They've bullied every single opponent since then, and mind you, they just played the most explosive offense in football, the Miami Dolphins. They're averaging 14 fantasy points per game right now. That's crazy. They are after your quarterback, 4 sacks per game, 2 picks per game right now through 4 games. And listen, what's even more impressive about this is they're not even healthy right now. Their best pass rusher, Von Miller, he's out right now. Jordan Poyer, he missed last week. Tre'Davious White just tore his Achilles. He's gone for the season, and they were still dominant versus the Miami Dolphins offense. They're bullying teams right now. They are just bullying teams straight up. Ed Oliver, Leonard Floyd, they're having great seasons in the wake of Von Miller's absence. The Buffalo Bills defense, they've got a tough schedule, but really right now, they're just playing too physical of football for me to not have them inside the top 10. Seahawks defense is the next defense here, and honestly, I did not expect for this defense to be on this list. Like, they were not a defense that I had circled to be a top 12 defense after week 1 especially. But this defense is physical, They're fast and they're young. And the young part is what makes me believe for rest of season purposes, they're not going to wear down. They've got Witherspoon. Devon Witherspoon, their first round pick this year. This guy looked like a stud in his first week. It was only 1 week, but he was a stud in that week. Bobby Wagner having a great season. Jaron Reed, Jordan Brooks all having great seasons right now. And they're averaging almost 12 fantasy points per game because they're averaging 4 sacks per game. Now, that number's a little bit skewed because they just sacked Daniel Jones like 11 times on Monday night. But still, this defense is physical, they're fast, and I believe their youth is going to help them last for the full season. Baltimore Ravens defense at number 10 here. Baltimore Ravens is just honestly really steady, and they're actually making a lot of splash plays. 9.5 fantasy points per game, almost 4 sacks per game. They're averaging basically 1.5 turnovers per game. Like, this defense is physical. One of my favorite players on this team is Kyle Hamilton. Safety out of Notre Dame last year. This guy is turning into a beast right now. Like, he's turning into a beast. This dude has 3 sacks already this year, and he's a safety. This guy's getting used all over the place. Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, they're having great seasons too. The Ravens defense to me is a very, very good rest of season defense in fantasy football. Number 11, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers here. Listen, I will tell you this about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and I really say this every week, that they're inside the top 12 defense rankings for the particular week. This defense is going to continue to be in the top 12 a lot of times because they are able to get the ball. They create turnovers, and you can see it on the screen. 1 pick per game, basically 2 forced fumbles per game. And yeah, they average a defensive touchdown every other week. So like, this defense definitely is a very, very strong contender up here. They're averaging 10 fantasy points per game. And listen, for those of you who are new, I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I have family in Pittsburgh. The Steelers DNA runs in my blood. But I always say on this channel, my fantasy football analysis comes first. With that said, my knowledge of the Steelers for watching them for about 20 years now is robust. And what I have to say about the Steelers defense to you, to be honest with you, is this is a defense that is really predictable because a lot of times they're going to come out and lay eggs. But then a lot of times they're going to give opponents fits offensively because they will be motivated to play. This team is motivated to not let Mike Tomlin have a losing season, and that's as far as their motivation goes. So that's why some weeks they do come out flat and get absolutely destroyed like they did against the Texans, and then other weeks they look really, really good. This is a defense I do think is inside the top 12 defenses for fantasy football. Kansas City Chiefs rounding out the top 12 right now. It's so interesting because this defense is honestly, I think, the best that Mahomes has ever had. Like, dating back to Texas Tech. He's never had a defense like this. They're averaging 7.5 fantasy points per game and almost 3 sacks per game. And mind you, they've got one of the toughest schedules in the league, and they've already played elite offenses. So this is not just like a fly-on-the-wall situation where 1 week they're really, really good. No, they've got playmakers on this defense, man. Trent McDuffie in the secondary, he's really evolved as a player. Chris Jones already having a monster season in 1 less game. This defense, man, they're really, really good. And even though, very similarly to the Bills, they've got a tough schedule, I really like the Chiefs defense moving forward in fantasy football. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for Week 5 fantasy football. And if you want to see the top 12 tight end rankings for Week 5 fantasy football, click on this video right here.